Welcome back, everybody. We're going to be looking at a request that I had today for firing off a fracture inside of Unreal using triggers as opposed to physics. Right now, I have these planks as a static mesh that I've created. It has a basic collision on them, and I've placed 6 of them, or 5 of them into the world here. And then for that, I'm going to take these and turn them into a geometry collection so that Unreal can interact with the fracture system. We're going to go up to our mode and select fracture, shift 6 for the hotkey. And with these assets selected, I'm going to click new. And I'm going to choose where to put these. I created a geometry collections folder, so I'll just call this SM planks. And you can do this with any collection of assets. We're going to see each one of these things as their own individual board to be broken. So by default, we see level 0 is the whole thing, and level 1 is the subset of assets here. We're going to break each of these boards by selecting them one at a time. I can select them over here inside of the fracture hierarchy, or I can select them inside of the world. And when I select one, I'm just going to select uniform to fracture. It's going to show the fracture pattern. If I want a different fracture pattern, I can click it again. And you can, of course, control a bunch of different variety of variables over here. So as I select a pattern that looks good for me, sure, why not? I'll click fracture, and I'll just repeat that process for each one of the assets. And I could select them all together, but it would get you a pattern that represented a cut that potentially could take 2 boards and leave them together in a very awkward cut. So with these in the way that we want, if you ever decided you wanted to back up, you could always reset. And when you choose reset, you can push the button and it'll undo those options. But my geometry collection is now configured in a way that will allow me to shatter it into smaller pieces that will hopefully respect the arrangement of the boards individually. So with those selected, I'm going to do one thing real quick just to make this a bit more readable. Is I'm going to turn show bone colors off, and then we can get back to our material. I'm going to need to add a physics field to this to be able to affect these things. So the collection by itself right now is set to dynamic. So I have this plank over here that should fall down, and it's not going to fire it off. So if you had it set to something like sleeping for this asset kit here, for the geometry collection, if I set it to sleeping, you can see it started to move a little bit. This is actually doing a slight calculation to get it to move. If I wanted to demonstrate that further, we can come down to this damage threshold and change this down to something ludicrously low. And then you can see the boards will all fall apart. So with the boards falling through the world, obviously there's some problem with the configuration of this, so we'll just bump this up a little bit here. There we go. All right, so some adjustments may be necessary to get yours to behave in the way that you want. So the boards are falling apart, but they're not shattering. And this is because we didn't have our damage threshold low for the second tier of breaking. So the second tier of breaking happens, then that'll be based off of this threshold after the first tier has been crossed. So I'm just going to return those because what we don't want is to have anything in the world activate these through physics. What we want to do is activate this through a controlled trigger. So to do that, I'm going to need to create a few assets. First thing we're going to generate is a new blueprint. I'm going to come down to my gameplay folder here, and we're going to create a new blueprint class, and we're going to use something called the FS masterfield. So this is for a field system actor. When we click the master field, we'll call this FS link breaker, and you'll see that it gets me this radial actor here. We can control the size of this thing if we want it to be a plane, point in a particular direction, but I'm going to just leave it as a sphere for right now. And this configuration should be fine enough for us. There's a few things we want to look at. It's on delay. I'm going to set it to 0 so it'll fire off automatically. And then if you go all the way down towards field settings down here, under field settings, the linear and angular velocities, this is the strength of our push that's going to happen when this thing gets activated. So right now, the boards don't move, but if I add this actor into the world, put it right here, we can see the boards are getting knocked down. So if the boards are getting knocked down, that's good enough. We can consider that this is accomplishing the goal. If I place it up here, it'll knock the top ones off more. If I place it down here and off to the side, it's more likely to knock the left ones off and leave the right ones in place. So where you place it is going to matter. It's originating at that hub. This actor may look intimidating in the viewer here because of all the pieces and parts that have going on, but most of these are just debug supports. So don't get too hung up on the details there. So with these things coming out, I want to make sure that my board will actually shatter when it gets kicked out. So I'm going to drop these down to something a little bit more approachable, say here, and then the boards will break underneath. So the individual boards will go away, and then these boards will come across. One thing you'll notice is that as I walk around, I just got turned around a little bit there because the pieces are trying to solve physics underneath my feet, which means they're perpetually doing physics calculations. This is not what we want. It's bad for optimization and can create emergent gameplay that does not produce the type of experience that you want for your player. So to do this better, we're going to add a new asset, a new type of field, and this is another field system actor. This one is called a sleep disable actor. So when I come over here, this type, we're going to call this FS blank sleeper. This is a little pink box, and I don't need to do much of the configuration over here for right now, but basically you're going to size this as a volume that's going to take any physics actor that rolls into its space, and it'll affect it dynamically to change its behavior so it doesn't have that perpetual issue of being calculated. So when I come down here, it's going to look for it's going to say the field is active by default. The threshold of 2 means anything that's moving with a velocity magnitude of less than 2 is going to be affected, and it's going to have its value set to sleep. So when we do this, you'll notice that the objects, I can still collide with them, but they're not trying to calculate physics anymore, or at least they shouldn't. There we go. So as these objects get put to sleep inside of the space, we want to consider that the interaction that we would have with them is not ideal, so we're going to actually change them to disable. That way the player doesn't have to bump up against them. So as the stuff comes down to the ground, I can walk over it, and you can see I'm unaffected by the physics of those objects anymore. And so since I have the physics field working correctly, and I have the sleep field working correctly, now I can work getting my trigger to fire off these things when we want them to. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this field trigger here, and I'm going to change it from active to inactive, and I'm going to take this field actor and I'm going to change it from delay to trigger. And so with these two adjustments in play, you'll notice the level isn't firing off this effect, and that's because we want to control that via a trigger. So a new blueprint class, blueprint actor, we'll call it BP blank trigger. And so I'm just going to add a box collision, call that trigger. And then inside of this trigger, I'm going to do a begin overlap, checking for the player. If I can type. There we go. So I need to get a reference to these two other objects. So I'm going to create a, let's see, break ref and a sleep ref. And for this one, we're just going to do FS plank. Plank breaker and FS plank sleeper. So with these two things set up, I can come over to the reference for both of these, do a control drag to get the get. We're going to use a effect. Since this is set up on the breaker, we're configuring it now to use the not delay but the trigger option. And that's on this specific instance, but we can set that at the parent class as well. Since we're going to be doing that, what we're going to do is reference the trigger delegate that we have built into this class. So we're going to use the CE, which is custom event trigger. So this is the trigger for this. So this will fire off the activation of that master field. And then for sleep reference, we're just going to set active, which should be down here, set field active. And we're just going to set that to true. So we're going to wait till the player touches the trigger. We're going to get that the break reference, so we're going to activate it. And then immediately after that, we're going to set this to sleep. And I'll show you why we need to do it this way in just a second here. So if we have it like this, I should be able to get my trigger reference. We'll just put it over here, and we'll make this a little bit bigger for the player to run into intentionally. Okay, and with the BP trigger in place, I just need to attach the break reference. So I'm going to grab the breaker, and I'm going to grab the sleeper, and it should happen that when I walk into the trigger, my break happens and everything goes to sleep just fine. And the reason why we need to set that up in this way is if I happen to have the trigger where I set this sleep up to be field active, before this break occurs, then you'll find there's a problem in that I can collide through these things and start to affect a number of physics issues. So we just want to make sure that when we have the sleeper on or off, that we're turning it on with the collision, and the collision isn't able to be triggered on its own. All right, so with that, I think that demonstrates very clearly how to set up a geometry collection, apply a fracture, control it through an external master field force, stop the physics from being troublesome for performance using a sleep field, and how to control that through a trigger. So I hope that this gives you an idea of where to go with this, how to apply it in your project. Obviously, there are hundreds of settings in each one of these fields and actors that you can configure, but please take this with you, go out there and keep building.